Well, unfortunately on this guy here, we won't get a chance to pull the head to take a look to see what the valves look like or the pistons look like. Customer doesn't want to put that money in there. The difference between doing what we're doing now versus pulling head with the machine shopping of, you know, replacing probably 4 valves, maybe only 2, but you know, replacing a bunch of valves, you're probably another $1,000 bucks, $1,500. Customer doesn't want to do that. They just want to cross their fingers, you know, throw the belt on, kind of see what happens. I think, no question about it, it's going to start. How well is it going to run? Probably not very good. Building compression won't be the problem. I think if you were to do a compression check, you'd probably get okay numbers. The issue is that bit of leakage into the intake. What that's going to be equivalent of is EGR. You're going to be choking out the other cylinders and not going to be able to breathe. Because of that, it's not going to run very good, especially at idle. But one other thing that I thought was kind of interesting on this guy here, pay attention to this hose right here, this pipe right here. I'm just going to open that driver's door. Key's not in it, key's definitely not on. I'm just going to open the door. Watch that. Oh my, it frickin' primes the fuel pump whenever you open the door. So if you're working on one of these and you got that sucker off and you're doing anything you don't want to get gas on, make sure to disconnect the battery or, you know, pull the fuel pump relay or what. Wow, Volkswagen. Anyways, let me finish getting this belt back on and we'll fire it up and see what happens. So the first thing I want to say is, if you're doing one of these jobs, you know what, probably best to follow a Volkswagen expert, what they say. I'll mention what I do. This is what I do. I'm going to tell you, follow the advice of a Volkswagen expert. So this here is a spring-loaded tensioner. It does operate off of an eccentric here, as well as it is spring-loaded. There's a big stud that comes out of the block. And this bit right here, that goes into a frost plug. So then what happens is this back plate here, it's fixed solid, it can't really rotate. So when you rotate this part here, I know this might not be the best explanation, but we're gonna have to work with this. There's 2 little holes, you can put a tool in there, and by rotating this is pushing that in an eccentric motion. So that will be pushing, as you rotate this way, it'll be pushing the tensioner body back and forth. But since this part right here is fixed, so if we look at the back side, when this is going back and forth, this part's fixed, what's going to happen is it's going to cause the spring-loaded part to turn. So what they say in the instructions is, when you get this sucker hooked up, you kind of go, they say go 5 times back and forth all the way as far as you can go this way, then 5 times all the way as far as you can go back that way. And then what you want to do, you know, you loosen the nut. So loosen the nut, you get your tool in here. They do make a special wrench. If you have a bit of patience, and especially when this mount bracket's kind of jammed against the body, you know, I'm further along, so I got it bolted up. But normally this is kind of in the way the whole time, you kind of deal with it. It gives you a surface to pry off of. So what I use, I just use a pair of snap ring pliers. It is frustrating, it is annoying. I have them right now in the spreading direction. Probably would have been better if I switched it around, but either way I can work with it. It is frustrating, it is annoying, but you can use these. You don't have to get the special tool. So you loosen off the nut, you put this on there, and you crank her over until you cause the pulley to walk on the eccentric this way to give it more tension. Now, what you want to do, as you're doing that, this locating tab here kind of comes, and you want to kind of stop it right there. Then tighten it up. When you got this tight and you kind of got it set so that your pin is right there, this will be able to have a bit of spring tension. Even once it's tight, it will walk back and forth a little bit. It's not a fixed pulley. It will be able to take up some of the impulses of this belt as it's flying around. So what I'll do is, you know, I get it kind of set to there. Actually, I go a little tiny bit further. I go a little bit past it. Because, you know, in these older vehicles, I like to have a little more tension than a little less. Push on the belt afterwards, on kind of all around. Give it a yanks here, give it a yanks there, because what you can have happen is, say you can set it to where it wants, but maybe it's kind of sticky a little bit, and then you pull on the belt a little bit, or you turn the whole assembly around, and then you go back to look at it, and holy crap, it's all the way over here, right? So I do that a few times, kind of tension the belt, push on the belt, make sure that it stays at least there or past, if that makes sense. So if it's a little bit past, and I've flexed the belt all the way around and it is not coming back, then I'm good with that. So you can see that frost plug in there where that tab goes into, and you can see right now the needle is situated a little bit past that window. Not a ton, but a little bit past. I'm good with that. Anyways, you saw that window is the needle is a little bit past the window. You know what? I'm good with that personally. So, you know what? They're a little bit of a pain, but the thing that is nice about this style of tensioner is when you're wanting to put the belt on, it can help you out. You know, you move the eccentric so that the pulley is all the way away from the belt to give you as much slack as possible. Then you can tighten that down. Then that makes it easier pulling the belt off. And then of course, then you can set it afterwards. You'll definitely need a wrench. If you're using a tool like this, it is a little annoying to tighten that nut. I have these speed wrenches. They look like that, so I can kind of walk it back and forth. Otherwise, you just kind of find your position, and you might have to go a few runs at it. But what you can do is, if you tighten up that nut and you go to look at how you're set up, you go to look at your position. Say if you're not tight enough, what you can do is you loosen the nut a little bit, not all the way, crank her over a little bit, tighten the nut, see where you're at. If you're way over, I don't know how well I'll be able to do this, but yeah, if you're way over, then all you have to do is loosen the nut a little bit, give her a little tap to allow the spring to kind of work its way back, and then tighten it again, and maybe do that a couple times until you're in a spot that you're good with. Yeah, also when you're doing this mount bracket, it's really annoying, but you just deal with it, you work around it. And yeah, if you are taking any of the pulleys off, make sure I always use Loctite on these. Basically, good rule of thumb is any rotating assembly, put Loctite on the fasteners. Yeah, so then also when you rotate the crank over twice, do it kind of slowly, evenly. I have seen on some setups, if you jerk it, you can cause that thing to jump a tooth. That sucks if you got a hydraulic tensioner. Try to go really smooth for the last half rotation, and make sure your marks line up. Obviously, if you mark the belt, 2 marks on the sprocket, those won't line up again, but your sprocket marks, so this one right here to there, that should line up. And then down there on the harmonic to the timing cover. Okay, so now comes time to turning the engine over. We're going to turn the crankshaft twice, camshaft once. So I always pay attention to the camshaft. I just bring that mark back around to there. You want to go nice, even movements, slow and steady. If you go jerky, they can jump at times. So you might need to get a big long extension so you clear the body of the vehicle, and just start rotating her over. Nice and slow, so if anything binds, if for whatever reason you didn't pay attention to a mark and things go tappy tap, then you can stop beforehand. All right, so we're building compression, but we're getting near the end. We try and go as slow as possible. And right there. So, you know, we're all human. There will be a little bit of jerkiness. You try and prevent it. But we do see our mark there is pretty close. Let me grab you again. Put that down and grab you again for a second. Can you see that harmonic? Hopefully, again, hopefully I can zoom in on that. That's also really close. So what I was meaning by, make sure you got a good extension. So if we're down here, come on, come on, there we go. So if you can see that, I'm clearing the body, so I can go full swings. You don't want to have your little a smaller extension where you're kind of in the wheel well, because then you'll hit and you might have to stop when you don't want to. So make sure you're set up. Rotate, always rotate it twice. Make sure your marks line up. Yeah, some vehicles like Subarus have 2 sets of marks. They'll have true top dead center, as well they'll have other marks that are slightly off top dead center, that allows you to bring, basically what it does is it brings the pistons off of TDC. So, you know, if anything were to happen, you know, the valve springs cause this crank or the cam sprocket to spring around. When the belt's off, then it's not going to hit, right? So on the Subarus, they have 2 sets of marks. If you line up one set to one marks and the other one to the other marks, you will hit. It's better to find out with a hand tool, doing it slowly. Sure, it sucks to take it back apart again, but it's a heck of a lot less bad than if you rely on the starter and find out then. So yeah, always turn it over. And yeah, sorry if this video is just all over the place, but you know what, it's a story. Anyways, let me finish putting all this junk back on together and we'll turn her over and see what happens. Okay, time to place your bets. Is it gonna start? Is it gonna start stall? Is it gonna run? Is it gonna be misfirey? What is gonna happen? It's time to put the key in. Now we know this already primes with the door opening, so it should already be primed, but wait, here we go. There we go. Battery is a little weak. Battery light finally went out. Well, it's running okay. Seems like it will be drivable at least. That's interesting to note. See what happens once that comes off cold fast idle. Okay, so it actually seems to be running okay. Kind of what I expected with the amount of leak, which was relatively small. So I suspect at idle, the idle is probably gonna be a little choppier. You might occasionally get little kind of fish bite misfires. I imagine it could very well misfire, you know, if you're lugging it up a hill. Low RPM, heavy load, that's probably gonna be pretty rough on it. But definitely good enough to drive it out and see what happens. Because, you know, the customer didn't want to spend the extra $1,500 or so to yank the head and replace all those valves. I can't say I blame them. The car's getting a little older. So we will finish piecing it together, drive it out, and see what happens on a test drive. Well, amazingly enough, we're driving this vehicle out, this Golf, and idling and just putting it in and out of the bay feels pretty normal, sounds pretty normal. So see what it's like on the actual test drive, see if it sets any codes, see what it's like going up a hill. It's funny, I kind of expected it was going to be a little choppier. Okay, so we were all the way back. Went for a good drive, a few kilometers at least. Vehicle's at full operating temperature. Went for long enough drive that it was at least at full operating temperature for 3 minutes or so, maybe even longer. And if you look at that tack needle, it's looking pretty steady. Under load, under acceleration, it all felt pretty normal. So I don't think anything would have sat. Sure didn't feel like anything set. Uh-oh, this probably is going to say it's probably not going to communicate. Okay, now sitting here at idle for a little bit, it definitely won't pick it up on camera, but I can feel an occasional little burble. Yeah, we got no fault codes. So what happens if we go in here? Can we see anything on fuel trim? Yeah, drive feels totally fine, but just sitting here at idle, I can feel an occasional burble. No question. Sure looks pretty normal on the trims. If we can get that to update again. Yeah, pretty normal. So if this were bad for combustion gases getting into the intake and choking out the engine, you would see quite negative, because it would be equivalent of an EGR valve being slightly stuck open. Okay, and if we go out of there, now let's go into here, shop manager, vehicle history, Volkswagen, that one. Wowie. Okay, live data. We'll just see if we can see anything that stands out at all. Yeah, Okay, here's our misfire counters. Yeah, they all say 0 so far. I don't know how long it keeps. So if you have just a very rare occasional misfire, I don't know if these are true misfire histories or if it needs to be a semi-continual misfire for this to register and keep numbers here. So since it says 0, I'd have to assume that means just, hey, what's this, timing retardation. Let's give it a little bit of throttle. Just kind of look at these numbers to see any kind of, oh wait, what was that below that? Nah, it's just more of the same. Just gonna see if we see any variance. Nope. Okay guys, so we're back. We drove it for quite a while. It's at full operating temperature. You know, I got it to go probably about 5 minutes of drive after it reached operating temperature. I'll show you the tack, and the tack looks pretty consistent. Sitting here at idle after it's been idling for a little bit, I can feel the occasional burble, but not full misfires or anything. It's certainly not showing on the tack. When I look at misfire counters, I don't see anything. The fuel trims look pretty normal. So on the scan tool, I wouldn't see anything out of the ordinary. I don't know what the status of this is going to be long term. I don't know if this is going to do any damage to those valve seats over time. I don't know if the bent valve is going to cause a lot of excess wear in the valve guides, and then all of a sudden it's going to turn into an oil burner. That's possible. But on the flip side of it, what if you're able to get kind of a year out of it as an in-town driver, right? Is that worth the extra cost of, you know, the savings you get of, you know, maybe taking a bit of life off the engine? I don't know, right? You know, if it were my vehicle and someone told me that, hey, the proper fix is an extra $1,500, or you could slam it together and it might be fine, just bit misfirey, maybe turn it into consuming a little bit of oil. Is it worth it, right? I don't know. So anyways, it's definitely interesting to note that it's running a heck of a lot better than I thought it was going to be. So and it's good to get vehicles like this. It's good to get vehicles where you know what the problem is, then you can kind of do tests and see how it shows on your test. So I was able to do an in-cylinder pressure transducer in cylinder 1. I can show that in a bit. And it shows a little bit on the intake valve opening. Instead of a nice straight line, there's a hump there. So it's good to know that, hey, keep an eye out for that, because if this develops into a little bit of a shaky idle, a little bit of a misfire, but not a huge misfire, you'd be hard pressed to figure this one out. At least that would be definitely not one of your first things to look at, would be a leak down test to see if you got a slight valve issue. You know, usually when you think of a valve issue or bent valve or any of that sort of stuff, you think of a good misfire, not just a little hiccup. So I think this is good to go for the customer. We'll hop inside, let's wrap this up, and we'll make a conclusion out of this.